Welcome to the Dr. Tom Show today. I am really excited to have one of the most genuine and humble human beings I think I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. And what I'm so excited about is he's really accelerated his career in such a short space of time. He's committed to helping other people do that. He's currently setting up his own practice in Winchester. It's called Evolve Chiropractic. So you've got to check that out. But after just a year of being graduated, he went to his first Kairos Training coaching seminar, helped by Dr. Brett Jones, and it led him to become the third lead trainer of Kairos Training culture in Europe, which is really quite an accolade. He's passionate about the true foundations of chiropractic and the importance of adjusting training to elevate the profession. I am really excited. Dr. Andrew Varnham, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, and I've been excited to have you on, and genuinely mean that, because we met years ago, I believe, originally down at Timony College where you studied. And you were just keen to help people. Were we in your gym? I think. Can you remember that years ago?
Very possibly, yeah.
Yeah, and you had just the passion to help people from the outset. So I'm really excited that you're here. But for those listening who don't know, I said Kairos Training culture, and I said Brett Jones. And for those who don't know, what is that, and where's that background? How's that led you to becoming a lead trainer that you are today?
Yeah, so it originally started as Adjusting Ninjas, which basically came from the need to actually train what we do outside of school. So oftentimes when we're training for a sport, so I've got a background in rugby myself, like you. I've done some judo, lots of gymnastics, and whenever I trained for these sports, there would always be specific drills you do, and you repeat things over and over and over. And you're doing 20 plus hours a week of physical training to then perform the end result. But what I found in chiropractic school is you have potentially one day of training what you're going to do, and then 6 days of nothingness, which is pretty similar across the world. So it's the question as to how do you train the motor skill in the beginning of the adjustment, because it is a physical skill. And then what components actually lead to be, the best chiropractor you can be. So a lot of that's presence, a deeper level of listening, and there's ways that you can train these things as well. So it's not just the physical, it's also beyond that space, and you move more into the mental and spiritual realms as well. And then it kind of formed slightly differently over a few years and changed into what is now called Kairos Training culture. So then I went to a camp about a year after I started working, and just the level of service that was there was just not something that I'd seen before. So I wanted to figure out, just deconstruct everything. How do they train? How do they communicate? What do they do on a daily basis to be able to perform how they perform?
I love that. And it's really true. Like, if you want to be successful in life, why not look at who is already, and like you say, deconstruct it, figure it out, and do it. You're right, having a background in rugby, you train way more than you play. If you want to be half decent, you train way more. But that just doesn't happen, especially when people graduate and leave university. I mean, it's even questionable to how much training actually happens at university, but again, regardless of where you study and how good you might be when you leave university, it's still like just getting a license. You haven't learned really how to drive a car yet. And do you think that the profession potentially is failing on its potential with the fact that we're not training?
Yeah, massively. So the end result of chiropractic school is to make sure you are competent to serve the public. A lot of people are in a place where they don't need competency, they need excellence when they come to see us. So if competency is the standard we're holding our graduates to, unfortunately, some will fall short, some will be competent, and some will be very good. But if we raise the standard to excellence and you fall short of that, you're still going to be great. So the question is, what can I do in my spare time to up the reps, basically?
If they shoot for the moon, you'll fall amongst the stars.
Yeah, exactly. I liken it to, and this is a weird way of looking at it, but if you go to a public toilet and you've got a competent cleaner, it's still going to smell like shit. So if you have an excellent cleaner, it's probably something which people are going to want to use. So sometimes people come to us, in a very bad place, and excellence is what they need.
Completely, it is what they need. Like, and flip it around. Like, as a chiropractor who values your health, you wouldn't want to go and see somebody who is half competent at what they do, or just competent. You want to go and see the best. And your community deserves that. I think your practice is a direct reflection of it. What can people do to just start flexing that muscle of excellence? You say you break it down. What are maybe some foundational things that people can just start straight away?
So it can start with just a base level of movement. So if you don't have enough range of motion in your hips to hinge backwards and support your posture over the table when you're serving people, you're just off to a bad start. So everything can begin with movement, breath work, and meditation. So you move to almost get out of your body, in the terms of when you're serving someone, you don't want to be worrying about your back or your neck or your shoulder. You want to be present with them. So you start by doing some certain stretches and movements that open your body up. Then through breath work, you can almost get out of this sympathetic state we all get in, so fight or flight. You can come back to a calming place. And then with meditation, it can just really help center you before you serve people. So that goes throughout from the beginning, and then deconstructing the movements that you're actually going to be doing. So with things like side posture, are you strong and stable in a lunge, for example? Can you get there? With cervicals, can you have an athletic stance in terms of a slight squat, just ready to explode out of it? Once again, you've got to be really stable. And then it's also training softness in your hands. So every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if your hand's really stiff, the person in front of you is going to stiffen up as well. So the more you can become in a calm state, in a soft state, their body will reciprocate what you're doing.
I love that. And I love the way the first thing you said was about you. Like, I say this in the show, there's so many people with so many different things that we talk about, of starting with self first, and Ayn Rand's quote, like, take care of me for you and take care of you for me. Injury prevention as chiropractic is huge, but not just from like, oh, if you're injured, you can't work, but more what you said there. Are you actually thinking about what you're doing? Is you're focusing your attention on them, or because of the niggles, is it on you? And I've certainly been on the wrong end of that. I've certainly hurt myself adjusting. And I think so many people do and have. And even this call is a reminder to me to pick back up some of the stuff that I was doing that certainly gets neglected. And it's nice that you say it can just be a simple start. Let's say someone's going to listen to this podcast actually on the way into practice, and they've got a few minutes before they start. Practically, what can they do just before they start to get themselves ready for the day?
So it depends how much time you've got. If sometimes you're in a space when you've only got 5 minutes because you spent so long prepping and there's been some traffic, so you've got 5 minutes before you begin. The first thing I would personally do is work on my lunging and my squat. So make sure I can control those movements and that my body's opened up. You can do this thing called a founder, which you can just YouTube to watch the space, but it's very decompressive for your spine, which will just allow you more movement. And then I'll personally do a bit of breath work and meditation. It can be literally a minute long, and then shake your hands out too, make sure they're nice and soft.
I love that. It's really interesting. What actually came to my mind there is totally left field, and you might go, actually, no, it's really sensible. I was thinking about the shirt that I wear sometimes. Like, I wear this nice shirt, makes it fitted, I look good in it.
Yeah.
It's restrictive, that's certainly going to have an impact on how I adjust. Just thinking there, like, do that loosening up, and I think, no, my shirt might come up. But something simple as that is quite an issue, huh?
100%, yeah. I don't know how many pairs of trousers I've ripped so far, just through hinging through. So you've got to get trousers which actually open up and move with you, because if your clothing's restricting you, you're going to get in some weird positions.
So I remember playing team back to rugby. I remember playing, and I played for one team, and the shorts they gave us were they had an elastic bit in the middle between the shorts, which was so good because they never ripped. I remember early on in my career, I remember adjusting something like second or third patient of the day. I ripped front to back, bright pink boxes on, no change of trousers. I had to do a whole day just showing everybody everything. And I suppose I learned the lesson from that. Yeah, trial by fire, huh? You also talk about like showing up, like show up for your people. Like don't just turn up, show up. What do you mean by that? Like, sometimes, especially when you transition from being maybe an associate chiropractor to running a business, there's so many more things now you got to think of. And sometimes you just turn up because it's been a grind. And we can unpack that, and there's so many things that might lead to that. But what do you really mean by, don't just turn up, show up, show up with people that you serve?
Yeah, so I often will just think back to sports or kind of artistic endeavors. So if you turn up to a rugby pitch, your head's not in the game, you're going to get smashed, unfortunately, right? Similar thing with music. If you haven't prepped your song like thousands of times, and then people are watching you, you're going to play it 2 times as fast, you're going to hit the wrong notes. And it's the same with serving people in front of you. Is if your head's in a space of, your mortgage or something to do with the house or your relationships, then you're not actually present with them. So if you're not present, then it's a question of where is the service coming from? It's less of you to give.
And a lot of that adjustment is energetic, like in that metaphysical realm. You really are feeding off 2 energies meeting. That's a super important point. And again, practically, how can people do something? Let's say someone's got something, they're driving to work, they're taking a phone call, their kid's sick. What can they do now to focus?
A lot of it comes down to reps at the end of the day. So I have a daily practice. Sometimes it's 10 minutes in the morning. Sometimes it's been over an hour in the past, which is I do some form of movement, some form of breath work, and some form of meditation to center myself. And I'm at the stage now where if something's happened and I'm about to go on shift, it can literally take me about 10 seconds to reset my energy to that space because I've been there so often.
You create some kind of anchor that sort of pulls you back in straight away, is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
The monks do that, don't they? It's really interesting. Look at Buddhist monks, they spend the first half of the day putting their armor on, exactly what you said there, doing their meditation, doing their stretching, doing their practice, so that when they go into the field and they're serving people, their armor is high, so it can take anything that might come in that way. Again, it translates to many facets inside and outside of chiropractic. So if you saw a profession where everybody was showing up, and you saw a profession where everybody was training to be the best, to give the best service possible, what do you think could happen with chiropractic?
I think it would be a household name. So at the moment, sometimes you say chiropractor and people are like, so the thing with feet. So one of which is, our identity isn't fully known yet. And we're currently at the space where the research has been channeled to show certain outcomes. And that's also very restrictive in terms of what we see in practice, the results we see people receiving through chiropractic care.
And is that your aim for Evolve Chiropractic? Is that your aim to be a household name in Winchester? What's your vision for that place?
It can show people what can be achieved through chiropractic care. I think oftentimes you can hear about certain things happening, but until you see it in front of you, you lack some of that belief. So when you start seeing healing results in terms of people sleeping for the first time in 20 years or their digestion working without medication for the first time in their life, it becomes more than just an achy back or an achy neck, which is still important. We still need to meet people where they are, but the results people can achieve through healing is far greater than we're currently letting people know.
And that's really why you should show up. And it's a level of service that really changed somebody's life.
And part of it is if you see a friend for the first time in a few years who's really close to you and you hug, it would feel very strange if they're prodding and poking you and trying to find what's wrong with you. You can feel that energy, right? Whereas if you actually embrace someone lovingly, like, you feel it. And it's the same with when we put our hands on people in front of us. If I head somewhere else, it will come across.
You're so advanced. Like, how long have you been graduated?
I think it shows the time. We finished at the end of 2016, I think. Wow.
And I think the young bucks who are listening to this, I mean young in their chiropractic career, really listen up. Like, if they're not showing up, like, it's possible to have this level of understanding of what you do. And you say there's a difference between understanding it and seeing it. And people say, I haven't had that miracle in my practice, I haven't seen it. Well, maybe that's just because you're not showing up and you're not dedicated. Is it, have you got some more training coming up soon? You've got some training classes coming up for people?
Hopefully.
Kind of limited at the moment.
Yeah, we're at this space where if some people are going to come over, they'd have to self-isolate for like a month, and they can't currently take that out with their schedules. So, I mean, when our center's up and running, like, hopefully I'll be able to host something just in the meantime. One day experience as a taster kind of thing.
I think that'll be needed. I think it's great. I'll certainly come down and learn from the master.
Yeah.
What are you excited for most about your practice? What are you excited to bring to your community?
It's a space where I grew up, and I think there's quite a few centers there already. They all are very focused on pain, and there's layers to what we do. So oftentimes we need to meet people where they're at and then explain almost the layer above to show them, where they can go with their healing. So we're primarily going to be focusing on people's function. So assessing their walking, their squatting, having a look at things like heart rate variability. So that's another layer, is adaptability. Because if you can't adapt to something, then your function will decrease. And if you're not functioning well, that leads to pain. And then there are layers above that too, in terms of perception. So if you're misperceiving something, you won't adapt to it. If you can't adapt to it, you lose function. It creates the pain, sickness, and symptoms. So there's layers to where you can get people to. So my hope is to start a space which is not reactive, because everyone's reacting at the moment. So get them to a space where they can take their health and elevate it, as opposed to just reacting to a symptom.
I think the world wants that right now.
Yeah.
I don't think the world wants to react. There's a lot of people who want to be fine. Did you always think this way in chiropractic, or were you you say you grew up in an area where a lot of practices are pain? Is that your first introduction to chiropractic? How did it start?
My introduction was after a rugby injury. I damaged my neck in South Africa on a rugby tour, and I had a bruise basically from the base of my skull down my shoulder and down my back, and I had to wear a neck brace for about 2 weeks. And I was on cocodamol daily, and I basically couldn't move my head without pain. It was the first game I played on the tour. But I came back, and my grandfather was a physio, and so he did all this stuff to me. And at one point, he just came to my neck, and he stopped and he said, "Did they take an X-ray?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "What did they find?" I was, "Nothing in particular." So it's like, okay. So he was on C6, which shouldn't have a long spinous. As it turns out, mine's quite long. So it's just an abnormality, but straight away he was there and just knew that wasn't normal. And then he performed what you would call a manipulation for a physio. And I just suddenly got all this range of motion back. There was no pain. And initially I thought, if I can do that for someone, like that's a fulfilling career. So I was 15 at the time, and I applied to 5 physio schools, maxed out my UCAS, and then had a call with him. I was like, well, what was that thing you did? And he was like, oh, well, don't study physiotherapy. In 5 years, you won't be able to put your hands on people. Study a bit of chiropractic. So I did.
Amazing.
That was my introduction. It was purely from a place of pain and function.
Amazing. Where were you playing rugby? Whereabouts in South Africa were you?
Cape Town, Durban, Joburg.
Sweet. I did a tour there. It's great. Just great. Down the garden route. Just they have so much fun playing rugby, don't they? They smile and they hit you hard. Awesome, dude. If people want to find out more about you, like where can they go to find out more about you?
So you could go on Instagram. It's Dr Andrew Varnham. Will pull me up, and then also Facebook and Instagram for the clinic is evolvechiro.uk. So if you contact me on any of those channels.
I would definitely recommend people do that. I'll put the links in the show notes. I love Andrew's Instagram. It's cool. It's really cool. If you could leave our audience with one parting piece of wisdom or word of advice, what would it be?
With regards to training to be the person you want to be, define who that is, because then you have a heading. So you might fall short, it might turn into something which you're not expecting, but you will then have direction and know how to move an inch closer to that person that you're trying to become.
I have learned so much today. I'm excited to bring back some of my routines into practice and really show up more for my people. Dr. Andrew, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day. I know it's super busy for you at the moment, and I really, really do appreciate that. Thank you so much for being on Dr. Show.
Thank you.